It's time for City Beat, your source for all the latest news on the city of Thompson. Only on 102.9 CHTM, your radio station.
Good morning and welcome to this November 23rd edition of City Beat here on 102.9 CHTM. My name is Stuart Walter and my guest this morning is Mayor Dennis Fenske.
Good morning.
Let's start off by talking about City Council. The city received a letter from Minister Stephenson with regards to, I believe, some apartment buildings and some landlords. Could you go into a bit of detail as to what that letter was about? Sure.
We were seeking assistance from the Justice Department in regard under the Residential Tenancy Act that they administer. From that perspective, just from the point of landlords that weren't upkeeping their buildings or responding to tenants' concerns, and this has been an ongoing issue that we've escalated to her department, and I'm glad to report that their officials are working with our officials, and most of the issues have been rectified locally.
And then also, it was worth noting, Chief Mascarene was saying that he was very happy with it as everyone seemed to be working together and that headway was being made on the issue.
Absolutely, yep.
Moving on, City Transit, there's a couple of resolutions that were passed. One is the extension for transit grants. Could you explain why the extension is needed?
It's some deadlines, and this is a part of the red tape issues that we have with provincial government and federal governments in their granting process, in that their fiscal years are April 1 to March 31, and ours is January 1 to December 31st. So in the granting payments and deadlines, they don't align, and most often you run up against having to spend money in the first quarter of our next budget, and there is an allowance here now to have an extension into the next fiscal budget of the province, which allows us to go into the second, third, and fourth quarter of our budget.
And then the other one was with regards to bus shelters. They're finally going to be purchased, as far as I can understand.
Yeah, so the grant was received, and we'll be installing replacement bus shelters on Ashbury and Yale.
The fee and fine schedule was something that created a bit of debate from Councillor Wong with regards to the water meters. What are some of the major points of this year's schedule that may have changed from last year?
Well, I think the residents should understand that we have a policy in place that the previous tax increase, whatever that is applied to the fee and fine schedule for the upcoming year as the status quo amount. And then administration is to advise if a specific fee or fine is basically at the right amount, or it should be lessened, or it should be increased. If it's deemed to be at the right amount for status quo, then that means the previous year's tax increase is applied, so 1.5% from last year to this year to the rates. Otherwise, administration makes recommendations to increase a fee or fine, or to decrease it depending on the actual line item. And so from that perspective, we went through that process, and that was the resolution. The one issue that was raised and was specifically to a line item regarding the replacement of water meters. It was discussed and then passed by consensus by council to implement the fee and fine schedule as presented.
One of the questions we received from the public, one of the things that is increasing is transit fares. The question received, how will the city be letting transit riders know about this, and how much of an increase will this be for bus passes? Yeah, so the increase will go into effect January 1st. The resolution will be coming or it has already passed, but it's effective January 1st. And basically, just for historical purposes, the discussion on transit revenues, we receive 50% operating funds from the province of Manitoba. And if you're following the city of Winnipeg, they do as well. And for them, the province announced last year that they were freezing the subsidization at 2016 rates rather than 50% of the operating costs. So in our case, it's a minimal amount, and so the fee increase hopefully will catch up that amount that we're going to lose. We actually receive about $156,000 based on actuals. We don't have the actuals at this point for 2017, so we won't know what that number is, but the 2016 number was $156,000. Moving on, the other big one, we didn't get to it last week, but I said we'll get to it this week, that was the highly contested and debated one in council, was the amendment to the organizational bylaw. Could you just start out by talking what the amendment is and to clarify it? I know a lot of people have been asking what exactly all of it means and the reason behind the amendment to the bylaw.
Yeah, so the basic intent was that in all other instances other than AMM, which is the Association of Manitoba Municipalities, if a councillor wants to let his or her name stand for election or appointment to boards, committees, organizations that are, and as a City of Thompson representative, then a resolution of council is required. And the AMM is the only association that doesn't, in their bylaws, require that. The intent is that from the council's perspective, the majority of council feel that if you're going to represent the City of Thompson, first and foremost, you should have the support of council. And so this is basically the one left that going forward now that any organization that a councillor or the mayor sits on that represents the City of Thompson will require a resolution. That doesn't limit councillors on an individual basis of volunteering on sitting in on any other boards. As former Deputy Mayor Kathy Valentino explained, she sits on the AAA North Stars board as a volunteer, not as a member of council. So that's an example of if people want to volunteer and sit on boards, they're certainly more than welcome to. But if you're going to represent the City of Thompson, you need a resolution of council.
Why do you feel that this is something that's important? I know you mentioned during the discussion, during the meeting, you were saying that this is something you've raised at AMM in previous years.
I think it just goes hand in hand with who you're representing. You're representing the City of Thompson and the Council of Thompson, and you should have the support of that council.
And then finally, to wrap up our City Council portion of the show, what can the public expect at the regular meeting, which is taking place on Monday at 7 o'clock?
As format, it's going to be a little different because some of us are attending the AMM, Association of Manitoba Municipalities annual general meeting in Brandon on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So for Monday evening, Councillor Smook, Councillor Foley, Deputy Mayor Smook, and Councillor Beyer and City Manager Gary Sapatelli and myself will be in Brandon. We'll be phoning in to council. So the council chamber may look a little empty, but we'll be on the line from that perspective. We will have the majority of council participating in the meeting. So that'll look a little different from that perspective. Other than that, it's a small agenda. We've got some correspondence from a couple of ministers, some housekeeping correspondence, and a couple of resolutions, but pretty much a light agenda for Monday.
That's a pretty good segue into the next topic. You mentioned the AMM annual general meeting. Could you talk a bit about what's going to be going on there and why it's so important to have as many representatives from the city as we're going to have? Sure.
So the Association of Manitoba Municipalities, short version is AMM. It's their annual general meeting. It's held in Brandon, as you stated, and we're attending normally through our policies. We send the mayor, the city manager, and 2 councillors. We have an additional councillor, Councillor Beyer, because she is on the AMM board as the northern rep, so she travels independent of council, but she is an AMM board member. So that's why we have 5 instead of 4 going. The importance is there's 137 municipalities in Manitoba, all members of AMM, and this is a chance to interact with municipalities, but it's also an opportunity to interact with the ministers of the province of Manitoba. Many of them will be in attendance. We will have meetings with Minister Stephenson, Minister of Justice, on issues that we've outlined. We are trying to get another meeting, or a meeting, with Minister Gertson, the Minister of Health, and so we've got probably half a dozen applied for, and we'll see who we can actually meet with in Brandon. But it's very important to be there to have the face-to-face conversations, not only with the ministers, but also with other representatives of other communities.
One of the questions that was submitted, you answered the other ones when we were talking about the transit funding earlier, but has there been any update from the province in terms of helping share the cost of the CSO program?
No, there hasn't, and that's specifically why we're meeting with Minister Stephenson in Brandon, is to discuss and get to the end resolve of the CSO funding that we've requested back in May of this year. So far, the City of Thompson has carried the cost 100% for 2017 from May 25th on, and so we are looking to resolve this issue and get continued funding for our CSO program from the province of Manitoba.
Talking about money there, that leads again perfectly into our next topic of discussion. The budget consultation is happening next Thursday evening. What is it? Where is it? When is it? Why is it important for people to show up?
Good questions. It is on November 30th, 7 p.m. at the TRCC in the multipurpose room. We encourage everyone to come out. This is where we look to get suggestions either for revenue generation or for cost savings in our budget. Our operating budget is around $23 million on the operating side, 32 if you throw in the capital expenditures as well. So we really want people to come out, and we'll go through an exercise where people can write down their suggestions, and we'll have some flip charts and paper to go on with that. We'll calculate all of those and collect them, and then go into our budget meeting with those suggestions. So also at the same time, we'll be rolling out our annual survey of depending on the wants and needs of the community, what's important, what's not as important in all of the areas that we operate. So that survey will be available online at thompson.ca, and also hard copies at City Hall and the TRCC as of November 30th.
And then finally, one of the final things we'll talk about is snow removal. We just got a dumping. We're supposed to get another one today and another one on Monday. Could you give the latest on the update for snow removal? Sure.
So right now we are in the priority 3s, which is the residential areas. They're just finishing up the Burntwood area at this time. And as you mentioned, there's a snowfall. If there's a significant snowfall, as they're predicting, that will push us back into the priority 1s, which are the emergency areas. Priority 2 is the main thoroughfares, and then back to priority 3 in residential areas. So that's the reality of what we're faced with snowfalls. If we're in the middle of residential snow removal and we have a major snowfall, we will pull out of that level 3 area and go back to the priority 1s for the time it takes to get that cleared, and then come back to the 2s and 3s as well.
And then finally, winter games, we say this every week, but they're getting closer and closer by the week.
Absolutely, and the organizing committee, the host committee is working hard, and all of them volunteers, which leads me into my suggestion in regards to, if you haven't volunteered yet, please do so. It's an online volunteer registration. You can go to thompson.ca and just follow the links to the Manitoba Games. But also, in addition to that, Christmas is fast approaching. They have an online store for merchandise for the Manitoba Games. It includes hoodies, water bottles, T-shirts, hot coffee mugs, and so it's very easy to shop online. If you've got looking for a gift for family or friends, be sure to check that out again through thompson.ca and follow the links to the Manitoba Game site.
And according to, just got the latest update, it's 100 days until the games.
That is, days are counting, and so people are getting excited.
Well, thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Thank you.
If you have any questions you'd like answered next week, email them in advance to CHTMnews@arcticradio.ca. For City Beat here on 102.9 CHTM, I'm Stuart Walter.